The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in on a Friday. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. 489-1240 to get in. 800-825-5865. Well, it didn't happen last night for Husker Volleyball. We'll have some thoughts, and we'll have some thoughts from some volleyball insiders on what could have been and what Penn State did to Nebraska volleyball. So we'll check in this hour. Jacob Padilla with Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports en route back from Louisville. Great coverage with him and Anna. And their digital coverage with Hurrdat was incredible. So we'll check in with Jacob Padilla here in about 30 minutes. Brian Christopherson with Husker 24/7 Sports. Get his thoughts on as the portal turns. Coach Rule and some players today met with the media. So BC here in about 15 minutes or so. Hour 2, Pride of Fairbury, it is Bill Doleman time. Billy D will join us. And then John Baylor, JB, voice of Husker Volleyball at 5:25. And he's imaginary. He wears red. I think this is our 15th Naughty and Nice gift exchange with the infamous Clausborne. He's imaginary. He wears red. And Claus has some gifts that'll keep on giving for folks in the sports world. So Claus going to be with us. We'll dive into the Friday forecast. Elijah, we were both up late. You were watching Denver and the Chargers. Tough one there. Good ball game. You watched Nebraska surge out to a 2-rip lead in the National Semifinal against Penn State. We'll hear from John Cook in a moment. And it wasn't to be. Penn State dug deep, literally and figuratively, and found a way to reverse sweep Nebraska for the first time since 1982. 103 straight matches. That graphic has made its way around social media. That was there on the screen on ESPN's coverage. We'll get to some portal names as well. And a little insight here on what really went down with Isaiah Worrell, the tackle from Nevada that picked Oregon midweek as he visited Nebraska. He visited A&M. He looked at Lincoln and was set to go out to Autzen as Nebraska lost out on another tackle, but Nebraska is still in the hunt for others. We get our starting 5 shout-outs going, so a lot of ground to cover and more names and more visits for the Big Red as we continue to make our way through. And Nebraska will take off Monday for the Pinstripe Bowl. Our programming, we are back at you Monday. We have a weekend edition tomorrow morning at 7:45-ish. And then we'll be off from Tuesday through Thursday and next week with some best of Hail Varsity Radios live a week from today at Ameristar Council Bluffs Casino right across the river. Come by, say what's up to us out at Ameris Sports Bar as we'll get you set up for the continued bowl extravaganza. Elijah, have you focused, shaking yourself off? Late night. Tough ball game.
Ball games.
Tough way to finish for a team I think we both thought was destined for another championship bout.
Are you talking about the Broncos or the...
I'm talking about volleyball.
Sorry, had to throw that in there. Yeah, no, that was
I'll get back to you on Denver.
That was a hell of a double whammy. Both teams in great position to win in the second half, and they can't get it done. So that's it's an unfortunate Thursday night, but I think as he kind of said, disappointment for the Husker volleyball team doesn't necessarily mean failure. You're disappointed in how the season ended. You're disappointed because you thought this was a national championship team, and I still think from a quality point of view, like the talent that John Cook put together on this team, it was national championship caliber. Last year was as well. And whenever you look at that, the regular seasons that you had the past 2 years and both of them end short of a national championship, the fact that that feels like a disappointment, I think is...
Because you have the level they're at.
Yeah, it's a credit to Terry Pettit. It's a credit to John Cook that they have built up a program that has expectations that are that high on a year-in, year-out basis where, I mean, if you're a Husker volleyball fan, you have that feeling that there's inevitability that, you know, it's going to be an Elite Eight or a Final Four or a national championship match at the end of the season. That's a credit to them. You can be disappointed in the result, but also understand, man, what a wildly successful past 2 seasons it's been. From Volleyball Day in Nebraska to kick it off last year, a run to the national championship match last year, which also ends in disappointment, but then another fantastic season this year. Back-to-back Big Ten champions. I know last year was outright. This year you had a share of it. Still in both cases, a Big Ten championship in the most talented volleyball conference in America. Some fantastic matches that you got to watch. It ends in disappointment. I think there's still a whole bunch of disappointment within the state of Nebraska today just in how last night went down. The 2-set lead, the lead you had in set 4. You can't get it done in the 5th. Disappointment's going to abound, but just because there's disappointment doesn't mean that the last 2 seasons was a failure, because calling anything short of a national championship a failure it's harsh, and it speaks more to what John Cook and Terry Pettit have built than what this team was unable to accomplish.
No, they were right there, and you can look at it a couple of different ways. This thing's going to stick with you as a Nebraska sports fan because you were on the verge for, match point a couple of times. That's one story that you weren't able to step on Penn State's throat. The other side of it is they are dangling from a cliff. All right? They're dangling. They're about ready to free fall and hit a couple of times and be done. And they not only staved off elimination, but they came all the way back. And they've got a couple of, for lack of a better term, killers on their squad. One used to wear red and white and then red-shirted, and Jaravicious. And, man, she spearheaded it. And I'm not Mr. Volleyball expert, but you just felt it click for Penn State where they got all momentum. And, momentum in this sense, in the sports world, you crave it, you wish it, you want it as a sports fan. You want your team to have old Mo wearing your team colors, and it takes a while to build up, and you can sustain it, and it only takes one play to gain it. But, man, it can go away, and then it is fleeting. You can't get it back, and that is a 12th man or a 6th man on the court or an extra man on the football field, an extra phenom on the volleyball court, basketball court. You just place old Mo and momentum against you, and you're done. Well, in a lot of instances.
And to use your analogy, I kind of to use like an action movie analogy, you talk about Penn State kind of hanging from the cliff, hanging on for dear life. It felt like definitely in that third set. Definitely in the 4th set, but maybe even in the 3rd set. Like, you had that moment where Penn State's hanging from the cliff, and here comes the guy in an action movie ready to come step on their hand and finally send them over the edge, and Nebraska never did that.
Yeah, they grab your ankle and flip you over.
Yeah. On one hand, it's a credit to Penn State, but on the other hand, man, Nebraska, they're going to be kicking themselves over their chances to close out both the 3rd set and the 4th set, because the chances were there, especially the 4th. You're up 22-16. And you feel like it's done right there.
3 points.
But then Penn State, they pull themselves up from the ledge and knock Nebraska off the ledge, and they're the ones that are still standing. So that's the reality of sport. That's the reality of volleyball. Volleyball is a sport where momentum looms large. I think that the 2 sports where you think about it the most are probably basketball and volleyball, where momentum, it's just impossible to quantify, but it's a very, very real thing. We'll probably see some of it in the college football playoff with bowl games over the next couple weeks. So it's a reality in all sports, but volleyball is one where it just seems so much bigger than the other ones, and Nebraska lost it last night.
It's either a springboard or a cloud hanging over you. And we talk about special teams a lot with Nebraska's football team, and special teams is a momentum killer or boost, right? Whether it's kickoff return, punt return, you hit a field goal going into half, you make a big hit on special teams, you drill somebody. The Rude Phelps hit back in '78. I mean, that it can make you or break you and carry you on. The other Dave is here as we say what's up, our starting five. Shout-outs in the stream. Jay is in, Black Hills Brennan. Good to have you, Black Hills Brennan. Shane checks in from Santa Cruz. Mike says, I watched it on TV. Andrew is here. Uncle Larry is in. Sad deal for the volleyball team. Sad, disappointing, maddening, frustrating because they are high level, and it's hard to get to where you go to the Final Four. They just make it look easy, going 3 of the last 4 years. Jeff is in. Arlo checks in. Chopper 76. Great Red Shark says, what's up? He says, I'm in, and for when it comes to transfers, he's launching the Jacory Barney fan club. How about Jacory's bling?
Yeah, the new chain.
The chain.
Well, we've seen Dana wearing the chain that says Dana.
It says Dana.
Which is awesome. Jacory Barney now has one with Barney the dinosaur.
I know, and I don't know if that's real gold or just gold-plated, but it's sweet.
Hey, those NIL checks, it's probably real gold.
The old Barney chain. Are we going to send Coach Barnett one?
I'm sure he'd wear it.
Barney wearing Barney.
Man, if there's anything that I'm sure Coach Barnett would wear, it'd be a flashy gold chain with Barney the dinosaur on it.
Is he going to go rock tribute and wear the chain outside the turtleneck? Circa mid-90s, early 90s.
We should get him a chain with, like, wings and ribs on there.
Something like that.
That he'd probably rock.
Or he might have a chain already. If he has a hat that says 6236, he might have a big old chain that says it. Sorry to go there. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, everybody. NASCAR Eric is in. Tuck says, what's up? How you doing? QB1 Ace is here. Walter in south of Philly. Is suggesting on where Nebraska special teams can stay after the bowl game. Mr. Erickson is here. Cliff in Florida. Cliff, we need that Florida panhandle warmth back up this way. It's brutally cold outside. Anonymous is here and says all they had to do was not get outscored 9-1. Kobe's in. Kobe, good to have you. Ronnie checks in. Wrestling Oranges is here. Captain is back. Says GBR always and especially against Penn State, but he is happy for Penn State's coach. So Nebraska Cornhuskers football team will make the college football playoff in 2025. That is Captain's declaration. Love it. Hope you were right, Captain. That'd be fun to cover a playoff team. Tim from Idaho is in. And we'll get to more of your comments. Game Dog is back. And let's hear a little bit from Sam. And, Sam checks in on the stream as well with, wanting to kind of dive in a little further to volleyball. We'll get to some comments and thoughts when we talk portal names and what Nebraska needs to lock in. But how about Coach Cook, Elijah? Let's hear from John Cook, his reaction to the loss last night. This was later. Maybe you've heard a little bit of it, but this is the full minute-plus comment from John Cook last night after Penn State went reverse sweep.
That was a great match. Got to give Penn State a lot of credit. I thought we put them away in Game 4, and they found a way to win that game and carried a lot of momentum into Game 5. And tremendous performance by Jess. She hit some shots. We had no answer for her. And again, hats off. Penn State beat us twice this year, so they deserve it.
Thank you. All right, questions? Back row right side, and then we'll come to the front on the left.
John, what are the plays that you needed to make that would have kept Penn State from being able to hang around in the match?
Well, we had that lead in Game 4, and we hit a couple balls to libero, and they transitioned. They got a couple aces, and we just couldn't. We just didn't make a couple plays. It was just a couple plays away from finishing that thing off. But it was a great match by both teams, and it's a bummer somebody had to lose it.
Well, it was. Elijah, that might have been your national title match. I know that is Sunday, with Louisville and Penn State, but your two best teams played last night.
Well, let's not say. I think Pitt was also talented. It's. Yeah, you could have a point. I'm not going to go out on a limb because we'll see what Sunday looks like, because I think a lot of people counted out Louisville against Pitt. And Louisville's a team that's gotten better as the year has gone on.
They're solid.
So I don't know if I'm going to go out on a limb and say that yet, but I see where you're coming from.
Would Pitt take Penn State down? Would Pitt take Nebraska down? Would Louisville take Nebraska down? They didn't. We'll see if they have a little Yum Center magic. So let's squeeze in a little bit more from John Cook if we have time. Do we? Let's hear from Coach Cook on the seniors.
Well, we don't have time, unfortunately.
We don't? All right, well, we'll talk some football with Brian Christopherson. More of your comments on volleyball. Great to be with you as you're invited to take us with, on your time, the podcast option with Hail Varsity Radio. All you got to do is search Hail Varsity Radio and just upload. Do it that way. Real easy to do. And give us a rating, good, bad, ugly. We want the feedback. Hail Varsity YouTube channel. And we'll check in with Brian Christopherson. Some portal targets, some names you know, maybe a name or two that you don't know, and some of those targets that are going to be visiting. Nebraska trying to lock in on Dane Keys to add to the wide receiver room. BC's next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Friday edition, Hail Varsity Radio. Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, and we say hi to Brian Christopherson with Husker 24/7 Sports. BC, how we doing? Gearing up for a good weekend. Thanks for the time.
I'm doing pretty well. You know, it's always a little comforting. I don't watch like every bowl game like with a lot of precision, but it's nice to like have it in the background. It makes me feel good. So I just walked away from the set watching Tulane, which has awesome uniforms, and that made me feel good.
Well, some USC fan right now is shaking their head still from the old Sugar Bowl a couple of years ago. They with the Tulane unis, and that offense was explosive. Nebraska trying to gear up and be on a big stage bowl-wise. It is portal season, BC, and Coach Rule, his session a little earlier today. Nebraska packing their bags, heading out to New York City, gearing up for Boston College. What do you think right now of not only Nebraska's targets in the portal, but their closing rate right now? There's a lot of guys right now trying to make decisions. Nebraska's made some additions. What's your feel right now?
Yeah, I mean, you got to say it's an incomplete grade for a bit. There's some promising things happening. They're trying to balance, as he said today, sort of, I think, between you take those big swings at some guys that you know you need that can help you day one and day two when they arrive. And then there's sort of those long plays, which you still make, which you feel like is a good no other way to say it, a good buy. I mean, we're talking about money here. Like it keeps you under the cap, right? I mean, let's just talk through it. And so, you know, Gabe Moore yesterday from Mississippi State, for example, is a guy who I think has a lot of promise, but he hasn't played a snap of college football in 2 years. He had an injury, but he's a guy that you think you can develop and can give you depth. But that's an example where that's maybe a longer-term play or a depth play. And then you get your ones like Nizia Hunter, the wide receiver from Cal, and that's a big one. I mean, he's an immediate 6'2", 210 receiver who can really, I think, play off Barney and some of the other guys well. And Husker fans should be really stoked about that one because he, much like Barney for his first year, put up very just steady numbers throughout. 9 of his 12 games, he had at least 3 catches. And I think it's a really nice piece to add. And obviously there's others out there like Dane Key, I know is the big name in the wind right now. We'll see what can happen with that. There's other big fish trying to get him. So, you know, I think so far you'd say they feel good about what they're doing, and they're not afraid to spend. People need to know that. They'll put some money, I think, out there for certain guys, but they want to be smart about it.
BC, they were ready to spend the most, it sounds like, for Isaiah World. He just wanted to go to someone that's in the playoff right now. I mean, is it as simple as that? Nebraska was ready to scratch that check for their tackle.
I believe that's true. Yes, I think they were right there above, with Oregon as far as the offering. But you said it in the question. I mean, the Ducks are in a spot Nebraska is not right now, and in a few of these standoffs, that might be a deciding factor. Maybe in some, it can go the other way, where there'll be some guys who will be sort of moved by the idea of like, okay, this is a program I think is building, and I want to be a central part of doing that next year. So that sometimes works both ways, but in this case, it seemed to go the other. I do think, the big man from Washington State, I shouldn't even attempt to say the name. I only write the names. He's a tackle that I think Nebraska's got a shot at. And then Keegan Tross is another, lineman they're looking at. And there's going to be other options as well. But as Dana Holgerson said yesterday, they are going to add multiple guys on the O-line, it seems like. It feels like they...
A little blunt with that, wasn't he? About fell out of my chair. He's like, we got to get some dudes.
Yeah, I asked a question on the Pinstripe Zoom call, and it was sort of just like wasn't a fluff question, but it was like your overview of what you have, and he immediately jumped to, we got to get some guys in here. It's like, all right, let's go. So it's kind of nice when there's no dancing around by the coach in those things.
It's Brian Christopherson with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brian, with the off-season changes, with Nebraska's aggressiveness that we're hearing about with Isaiah World in the transfer portal, do you think there's that urgency of 2025 might be do or die for this Husker coaching staff?
I think every coach in this profession now always looks at it like, I got to produce next year because who knows what could happen. I mean, that's just the way it goes. We've seen guys sign deals that are 7 years, 8 years long, and occasionally by the second year they're out. That's like our modern world now. Schmidt and I are of the age where we can remember Jim Walden or somebody getting like a decade at a school, and that just doesn't happen anymore. I think there's always urgency. I'm not going along with they're on the hot seat or anything like that, but I do think there's always that pressure. Okay, year 3 has sort of been the big build year for Rule at his previous 2 stops. And if you look at his track record, even though I think fans and I think people in the building thought they should have won a couple more games this season, they would say, okay, if you look at what he did at Temple and Baylor, there was sort of that 6-win second season type of year. That's what happened here, and now it's time to make the big jump. And so they're going to try to make the push as best they can with that. But they do have to rebuild big time in some spots. There's, Ty Robinson was a monster in this league this year, and he's not going to be easy to replace. So you got to find some of the right stuff right away in the trenches.
Brian Christopherson's with us. BC, I mean, it's good and terrible at the same time, where you can go get your next Ty Robinson with a phone call and a Venmo, presumably. You could also go recruit him out of high school, pray that he'll stick around, develop him old school ways, and then you get him, and it's a great story because you want that high school player, but you got to accelerate the development or pray that they're ready sooner rather than later. When it comes to program momentum, to kind of piggyback off of Elijah's comment, I mean, you can't lose momentum and faith from the fan base, from your boss, from your team. So eventually you got to pop. And, yep. I mean, Harbaugh was teetering on that, and then he did it, right? They went out and won a national championship after they did the old pay cut post-COVID. in that 2021 season. So he's one guy that lost some momentum and got it back and then got to the finish line. So it can happen, but you've got some grace period, Bud, and you also have the urgency and the resources to flip it quick. The thing is to eventually get that thing flipped quick and then sustain. That's the hard part.
Yeah, it is. And, I mean, to what Elijah was saying there, year 3 is the year I always feel it in our particular area. There's sort of that Midwestern grace that is allowed for 2 seasons, and it's not as graceful sometimes during the season, but after the dust settles, people are like, okay, this is where it's at. Now, year 3, let's see this thing get to 9 wins. Let's actually see that move. You know, whether it's a playoffs or not, at least get closer to it where you're in the conversation. And I think everybody over there understands that. You know, you know the resources and the money that's put into this program, and it's at play right now with some of the portal options and trying to get them in here. And so, yeah, absolutely, they're going to have to land some big targets along the way. That's why I say right now it's incomplete. Like, I feel like Hunter yesterday was a great example. Like, I don't know if, like, around the country, if you said who are the top 25 receivers in the portal, if Isaiah Hunter's like in the top 5 of some other people, but what matters is Nebraska had him targeted at the top of their board, and they got him, and so that was a big one. Dane Key would be a huge one, obviously, and there's some linemen out there that would be as well besides Isaiah World. So you can't get frustrated when you lose a big tilt with another school too, because it is hard. Like, everybody's got their elbows out, and other schools have big resources too. So you have to understand the fight you're in, especially for guys in the trenches. But I do think they're not afraid to swing big. So if there's any thought out there that that's the case, I just don't see that. If you listen to Rule, he says as much. He says they're well positioned to attack, and he actually kind of looks forward to this month of trying to do so. So let's see what they can get done. And remember that this is going to pick up again in January. It's not all said and done this weekend. It's
Brian Christopherson with us here. And Brian, as we wind things down, you mentioned Fa'amoa a little bit earlier, the Washington.
Been working on that all week.
Fa'alili Fa'amoa. Thank you. And then you also mentioned Dane Key, 2 huge names. Sounds like Key's going to be in town this weekend. Just from your outside perspective, who is the top transfer portal prospect on Brian Christopherson's big board?
The big lineman whose name you just said would have to be up there.
It's a pro move right there.
The big guy.
The big fella. Yeah, you know, the one I'm talking about, the big fella. Yeah, him. And, I mean, there's I think the kid who was in here yesterday, Keegan Foster, you know, he could be a good example too. I think you want 2 or 3, and Holgerson said that. So I think they've got good pieces like on their O-line now that are developing. But you know, you're asking some guys to make a really big jump, and so far this year, Donovan Raiola really trusted 6 guys, and Ben Scott's gone, Ben Hart's gone, Mizuka's gone, and so I like what Gunnar Gatula got done. That's an encouraging sign. I think Justin Evans and Letovsky were getting better, and they played their best football the last few games. So there's some hope there. But, yeah, you need to land a couple really big targets to go along with it. Sort of like we felt Ben Scott was a couple portal sessions ago. So that's big. And then I think Key's right up there, too. You know, obviously, George is after him as well. So, I mean, that tells you all you need to know. He's a guy who produced a lot for Dakeil Shorts at Kentucky, and you hope that relationship and sort of the resources Nebraska has can make that a good fight. Because I know a lot of the national guys are picking him to not go to Nebraska. So Nebraska, in a way, would upset the apple cart a little bit from what they think if they could get him.
Brian Christopherson with us. BC, have a great weekend. Thanks for the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. And, have a good Christmas, and we'll have a bowl game to talk about it next time, probably.
That'll be good, man. Enjoy.
All right. Sounds good. Bye.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Brian Christopherson. John Baylor joined us next hour. Bill Doleman, the naughty and nice list from Clausborne and the Friday forecast. He has done an amazing job of volleyball coverage for a decade and counting with Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. Jacob Padilla with us at Jacob Padilla _. Just a real quick update. Dane Key is on campus now for the Big Red. Maybe you've seen some of that on social media. So Nebraska's second target at wide receiver in the portal is getting the wine and dine experience. Jacob, how was the experience in Louisville? Let's just start there before we talk match last night. It was a whirlwind, man, but great coverage. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, the trip was good. Unfortunately, it's shorter than we anticipated. That's not the first time we've done this before where gone out and made a trip and Nebraska hasn't been able to make it through the first match. But we got some good stuff. I think wrote 6 stories there from the trip there between all the stuff that's happened out there. So it was worth going out there. Just unfortunate to see the season end the way it did.
Level of shock, man, that not only Nebraska fell, we know how good Penn State is, but just the how it went down. And we both stayed up late to watch, and it looked great. And even as Penn State got that third set, you felt okay about set 4. And then Penn State just dug deep and found a way. This is as shocking of a Nebraska loss across all sports. And I understand the level of competition Nebraska was facing. It was just something that you don't see happen too often, Jacob.
Yeah, there were cracks in this team all season, some questions going into it. It's just they had been good enough to win despite those questions throughout the season. And in that match, it looked like that was going to be the case again, with the way they got off to the start there and then the lead they had in set 4. And then they just couldn't find a way to finish. For whatever reason, as the stakes elevated, Penn State played like the team that had been there before. They played like the team that was they were playing free. They were taking big swings, and they were really letting it rip from the service line. And Nebraska just kind of shrunk for whatever reason. They kind of struggled. You saw them. They weren't playing as aggressively as Penn State was, and just couldn't quite finish it off. So. I think, like I said, again, there was some questions that popped up and ultimately cost them this match. But for them to, I think the way it finished is the surprising thing. Especially, I mean, what the players talked about was just how much more comfortable they were, and kind of the difference in approach they were taking this year compared to last, where it was their first time through and they felt the pressure and maybe led to let it get to them a little bit. This year it seemed like they were more comfortable. They were more confident. At least that's what they felt going into the match. But for whatever reason, they got to that point, and when the lights got really bright, and they weren't able to rise to the occasion.
Do you think that the team tightened up, Jacob? From TV, it felt like there was some nervousness in the arena. Could you feel that permeate to within the team whenever that momentum started to go away? Did you feel the nervousness?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think where it shows up is in the kind of swings you're taking. Like Nebraska had a match point there, and they tipped, and that's honestly that's kind of been the issue the last 6 years when they haven't like since their last title. They, for whatever reason, when things get tough at times, their offense is kind of gone into a box, and the other team, typically when they lose, the other team is taking better swings. And it starts with the passing. And again, Penn State upped its service pressure, and Nebraska was kind of out of sorts from that point. But even when they were in system and things were going, Penn State just took bigger swings. They were more aggressive, and so I think that's probably kind of where you see the nerves factor in most directly.
Is there a little bit of not wanting to make a mistake or have the result go the wrong way with that approach. I mean, you've got seniors that are leaving that are all world and fantastic talents. You've also got now a group of sophomores and a senior or a junior to senior to be and Alec, Jacob, that they've been to a couple of rodeos, bud. They've been right there. They've been there against Texas, learned from that. They really were just cruising this year and ran into a buzzsaw in momentum in Penn State last night. What do you think of this core group that returns? Because there's some special players that are coming back, presumably.
Yeah, no doubt. And, they'll be active in the portal to fill in whatever gaps there are going to be. But, the core of the team is still pretty young. The big key is they're going to have to find a way to replace the leadership of Lexi Rodriguez and Merritt Beeson. Everybody in the program just raved any chance they got about the way that those two led the team, and you could see it just in the little interactions. If you're around the team, you could just see Merritt Beeson in particular. We know everybody knows how much everybody in that program loved Lexi Rodriguez and what she meant to this program, but just kind of Merritt Beeson's kind of her active leadership and just the little things she did to make sure everybody around her was feeling confident and comfortable. And so it's going to be hard to replace that in addition to what they bring on the court. But I think Nebraska's got some good candidates to step in. Obviously, at that libero spot, you've got Lainey Choboy and Olivia Malk are going to be competing for that jersey next year. And they're two really, really good players. And I think Nebraska's going to feel good no matter who wins that spot. And then you've got Carrie Leinbach coming in as well to kind of just continue that pipeline of really talented back row players. And you've got Harper Murray coming back as your top option on the pin. You've got both your middles coming back. And, man, that second set, I think it was in particular, like the combination of Alec and Jackson offensively, Alec defensively, absolutely dominated that set. So that's a really good place to build off of with those two coming back. And obviously a two-time All-American setter, two-time Big Ten setter of the year. I think Bergen Riley needs to take a step forward next year in order for them to kind of take it to the next level. But I think Cook feels really good. And then around that group, we'll see what can Skylar Pierce do, what can Tariah Sigler do coming in as a true freshman. Can she crack the lineup? Taylor Landfair, what is year two going to look like for her in the program? So, it's Nebraska volleyball. They're always going to be loaded. Now it's just a matter of how players develop and, like I said, whatever additions they may make to round out the roster. Right now you've got one opposite hitter in Ryan Hunter coming in, freshman, really talented, coming off an injury that cost her last season. She's cleared now, but you never know kind of how ready she'll be. So I think the opposite spot, if we're looking at the portal, is one place in particular where we could see Nebraska add to what they've got coming back. But I think Cook and his staff are really comfortable about the core of the team that they'll have next year.
Jacob Padilla is with us at Jacob Padilla _ Jacob, safe travels. Thanks for the update and coverage, bud, with Nebraska in the Final Four run.
Yep, I appreciate you guys.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
So, things were going fine for the volleyball match. Nebraska was rolling along. Things looked good in set 4. And big superstition guy here. So I was on the couch. And to my right was Mr. Snuggles. That's Sterling, the Bernedoodle. To my left is the German. Gertie had crawled up there, and as long as Mommy's around the living room, she is not to look at the couch, let alone be on the couch. But the bunny was in her dungeon, and, it was just me and the pups watching volleyball last night. So What screwed things up was the wife coming out of the bedroom, and immediately Gertie looked at me and I looked at Gertie. I was like, we're in trouble. And she got booted off the couch, and then it all went to hell from there. So send email and other frustrating pinned commentary to the bunny, Mrs. Schmidt. That's what I'm going to say. It wasn't execution. It wasn't getting tight in the moment. It wasn't the mother of all comebacks from Penn State. It was my wife ruining the seating order that was doing so well, superstition-wise, Elijah.
Well, if we're going superstition, everything seemed to turn for my Denver Broncos whenever we flipped at halftime from the Broncos game on the big TV over to the volleyball game on the big TV. And now I'm watching the Broncos on a small screen, and it's all going to hell. And my roommates, they don't know what's going on, so it's the fourth quarter. Like, oh, the Broncos still winning? No. No.
It's getting harder to watch. Forget about it.
Well, I gave the Broncos the kiss of death whenever that fair catch free kick happened. Because I went, man, even if the Broncos lose by 3 today, I can't be mad because that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Well, it's momentum. We talk about special teams.
And then the Broncos go on to lose, and I regret I ever said that because you know what? That was not worth the Broncos' loss to see some fair catch free kick. It wasn't that cool.
Yeah, it wasn't really cool at all, especially now that they've swept you, and a little more pressure for the Fighting Donks to end it the right way to get into the postseason. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. 1 week from today, we invite you up to Ameristar Council Bluffs Casino. It's a road show Friday, as it's our pre-bowl show. We get you ready for Nebraska and Boston College a week from tomorrow. But we'll be at Ameristar 4 to 6 outside Amera Sports Book and Bar. Come say what's up. Go pick out a game or two you want to wager on if you're so inclined. And, yeah, can't wait for it. Friday road show at Amera Sports. And do that and say hello. We invite you by. Yes, we will tell you about the Supernovas next hour, how you're able to lock on, get season tickets, help raise the banner, be a part of history. Supernovas.com is where you log on for that. But pretty good second hour. Coming up, we'll check in with Bill Doleman. Pride of Fairbury is on his way to a Christmas party. John Baylor from Louisville, the voice of Husker Volleyball, the great John Baylor, and the Naughty and Nice list. Clausborne back with us here at 540 with Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it. It's hour 2 at Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. 'Tis the season. We have the Naughty and Nice list coming up from Clausborne. He's imaginary. He wears red. And John Baylor going to check in with us from Louisville. Bill Doleman, Pride of Fairbury, is here to get us going and talk some portal, talk some Huskers. Billy D., you are en route to a Christmas party. How is the excitement being contained in the Doleman mobile?
Well, I just leaving the greater Fairbury metropolitan area, and once you can get through the international airport traffic, things are fairly smooth once you get out to the suburbs. So far so good to get back to Lincoln and get into the Christmas spirit.
Well, that'll be outstanding, and a lot of ground to cover. We'll hit some playoff ball with you. The old snow globe under touchdown Jesus tonight with Indiana, Notre Dame. But we gotta go back to Louisville, and Elijah and I have spent a lot of time talking volleyball and the shock value of what happened last night. Not necessarily that Nebraska got beat in the Final Four, but how they went down. And my good Lord, what Penn State was able to do. I mean, they were on the edge of the cliff. They had a pinky hanging onto the cliff, and they found a way, man. They found a way. Great season for Nebraska, Bill, but a lot of folks are still just stunned with that late match last night.
Well, unfortunately, it's an historic collapse. I think it's the first time Nebraska's went up 2-0 in the NCAA tournament or something like that in over 100 matches. I mentioned it after the Nebraska-Iowa football game, which seems like months ago. But, that's a forever loss, one that you will always remember. And in football, there are those, the Miami Orange Bowl in 1984. You always remember games like that, 86 Nebraska football. And this for the Nebraska volleyball program is going to be one that even though you're going to look at the media guide and the all-time history 10, 20 years from now, when you look back at the history books, they're going to go, oh, yeah, that was that match where we went to the national semifinals, that team, had a mid-match collapse. And they had a chance to win it in the fourth and just did not get it done. And I really feel bad for this team. There was just something special about it after they turned the corner after the loss to Southern Methodist. And, John Baylor mentioned it on your show last week that, there's just a genuine love for each other on that team. And you can really sense that. And I think that's why, this particular Nebraska volleyball team, and there have been a lot of beloved ones over the last 50 years, this one's going to stand out, I think, because of the perceived chemistry and the love that they did have and the looseness and the fun and the videos with John Cook and how, this group kind of transformed his personality. And I think, renewed his joy for coaching, despite how painful last night's loss is going to be for a long, long time. But, one thing about it, and I almost think that to a certain extent that they were too successful. And what I mean by that is they did not face adversity very often during the course of the season. They lost to SMU, and they out with a 25-match win streak and just continued to crush opponent after opponent after opponent, including Wisconsin, 3-time sweeping. And, you could probably pinpoint on, just a couple of fingers how many times they faced adversity. And Dayton maybe, but you never felt like they were going to lose it. But when they faced adversity in the match last night, you saw similar, facial expressions and body language that reminded me of the Texas collapse a year ago when they got swept in the national championship match. So, maybe a couple of losses on the way to the Final Four would have helped that team because they would have been facing adversity. And once they did last night, the match was over.
And Bill, we talked plenty over the past couple weeks about how this team learned from the Texas loss last year, how they used that as motivation for this year. Now with a pretty stellar senior class headed out the door, do you think that last night can be a learning lesson? Can it be a lesson in motivation? What do you think last night means for Husker volleyball as you look towards the future?
It has to be. That's a very special senior class that's exiting, and it's a very special sophomore class that is still around for 2 more years. And that group of Harper Murray and Andy Jackson and Bergen Riley and Lainey Cho, that group really needs to, mature again. And, we talked about it a little bit that, is there that killer instinct that when you got a team down, you can go for it, and maybe that comes through multiple experiences of adversity that you find out who the toughest are in those moments. But I think people thought this was going to be a national championship season. One thing I guess that maybe heartening in the reaction after the match last night was, everybody remembers Harper Murray's tearful press conference last year that really got a lot of backlash, unwarranted, on her. And then last night, listening to her talk, I'm sure she was devastated, and I'm sure she held back the tears. But the way she addressed the media last night, I thought did show a lot of maturity that I think bodes well for her future going up. She's certainly grown up a lot in this last year, and I see her being a leader in the way of Merritt Beeson and Lexi Rodriguez going forward, along with Andy Jackson and Bergen Riley.
Bill, a name that was on the Nebraska roster, Caroline Juravicius, was absolutely vicious last night. Didn't have her best start, but had her best stuff at the end, helping will Penn State forward.
Yeah, I don't know what that relationship is. I tried to watch that a little bit, even in the match at Penn State, a couple of weeks ago. They certainly talk like, boy, we love each other and we wish the best for each other. But when she's on the floor, she plays with, there seems to be kind of an animosity, and I don't know what it is. John Cook in his press conference leading into the Final Four, talked about, well, we had a plan for her, and, guess she decided to go elsewhere. So it was just his comment was kind of superficial, but left a lot of mystery. So I don't know what it is. I literally thought, is it because she didn't play in the stadium match? She held that. She and Kennedy Orr were like the only two that didn't see the floor that night at Memorial Stadium. And I just wonder if there was something to that she resented redshirting at Nebraska. I don't know, but boy, it just seems to me that, the well-wishing words are a little cheap. And she's played well, and some of her body language indicated that the words she says are different than the way she conducts herself against her former teammates.
There's an edge, and let's just read into it. You didn't play me. I went somewhere else, and I won.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah. So now we all become Danny Busboom Kelly fans,
Yes. Let's get the Cardinal Red out.
Yeah. I'll tell you, talking about going, thinking old school and Penn State and all that, and why didn't Matt Rule do a nice job of dodging that question when somebody asked him about his alma mater? But, I thought when they called Harper Murray for stepping over the line and essentially being out of bounds, I'm thinking, why didn't you make that call, back in 1982?
Where was it 4 decades ago? Where's the consistency?
Yeah. You overlooked it in 82. Why couldn't you overlook it last night?
You want to get old Uncle Charlie cranked up? You just mentioned 82 Penn State. And he just... Well, hell, they had relatives reffing for him.
Yeah, well, Penn State's a great story with their coach and all that she's enduring now, and they're really good. There's no question about it. And I know that they said going into what was the fifth set that they were the better team. I really think Nebraska overall was the better team, but they just had the better attitude when it mattered most, and they had more fight than Nebraska did, and that's unfortunate. If Nebraska beats Penn State, as much as Louisville is a great story and winning a national championship at home would be great, I watched that match, and I think Nebraska's superior to Louisville, who did a great job in eliminating Pitt. You talk about a buzzkill, 4 straight Final Fours for Pitt, and they don't sniff the national championship. So that era might be coming to an end if their coach goes to the national team.
Well, your national title game was last night. Is what it was. Those are your 2 best teams in volleyball, and we'll see if Louisville can pull the upset. Somewhere Denny Crum is putting a game plan. Oh wait, wrong sport. Let's talk a little football, Bill. As it's portal time, and Nebraska has been active. They have had visitors. Those visitors are not always takes, but you're seeing kind of a combo plan from Nebraska, and that's G5 or FCS names, in some instances MAC schools, or you got the kid from Idaho, the safety. So there's that. They're also looking at some brand name kids as well. Getting the receiver out of Cal was big, and there's more folks that'll be shuffling in and out. Dane Keys, of course. So what do you think of Nebraska's approach here, trying to blend?
Yeah, isn't it kind of amazing now that when somebody hands a bag of cash to a recruit or a portal transfer and money starts to fall out of a bag because it's overflowing, the NCAA is right behind to go, hey, you dropped this.
Somewhere Emmett Smith is smiling.
Allegedly. It's just remarkable. Yeah. I don't think anybody has any true methodology as to how to approach the portal, because you don't know what really the situation is with those players at their now former school? Why are they going into the portal? What's the backstory? The amount of due diligence that can be done in a short amount of time is this is speed dating, right? So all those people who are so into the recruiting, which I hate, they know who's in the class of 2027 high school, right now. But when you start to talk about who entered the transfer portal, those same people are just going crazy trying to figure out who's that guy at Idaho, who's that guy at Louisiana Monroe. Oh yeah, I've heard a lot of great things. They don't know. And I'm not even sure that the coaches can necessarily do their complete due diligence on who they're getting. So maybe Nebraska's approach, where they're not, I know they got Williams Winery, and they already had an existing relationship with him, and that was sort of early in the process, which was, a week ago. Now it's kind of like, okay, who is the best fit for us right now that is available? Because we know there's going to be another window coming open in April. Let's get through spring ball and see what we need then. I just don't know how anybody can absolutely nail the transfer portal unless you really do get one of those maybe dozen guys that everybody's had their eyes on for, several years through high school recruiting and now into the portal. Because even Williams Winery, there's questions about what went wrong at Missouri, and nobody really knows that either.
It's Bill Doleman with us here, and Bill, along those same lines, you talk about how difficult it is to get it right in the portal. I feel like, you saw it with Signetti last season. You've seen it other places as well. The coaches that bring their own Louis, to copy a phrase from Deion Sanders, tend to be the guys that find success. And with that in mind, are you surprised that Nebraska didn't go find a sitting coach anywhere that has brought their own talent with them?
I think they're going to look at Dana a little bit. Dana's still not that far removed.
I think it's possible, and it may not be right away, but it may be, just like Nebraska with Winery. They had an existing relationship through recruiting, right? And maybe an Addison Williams or some of the other coaches who are coming on board, probably not the dude with the Chiefs that everybody, he's the man of mystery that nobody can mention, even though it's going to happen. But like an Addison Williams, okay, maybe he's not bringing anybody with him from where was he last, Central Florida, but who has he recruited in the class of 23 or 24 that may come, open this year yet, this spring, or even next year? That's when the dividends of recruiting bringing in a coach who's got recruiting ties. Maybe a year from now, well, he recruited him to Central Florida, it didn't work out, or he recruited him and he went to North Carolina, and Bill Belichick didn't want him, so they're bringing him to Nebraska. It could be not necessarily immediate like Signetti. It could be a year or two down the road, or 6 months to a year down the road.
Bill Doleman's with us, Pride of Fairbury, the professor here on Hail Varsity Radio. Bill, what happens tonight, the Irish or the Hoosiers?
Well, I think it's really intriguing that I understand it might be an Irish snow globe. Is that right? Isn't it?
A little bit.
There's some snow in South Bend. I think that may be the most watched game of football in Indiana, the state of Indiana history. Just because, gosh, I don't know when the last time those two teams have even played. But the fact that it's, I just think the stage is spectacular. Under the lights, at Notre Dame, the snow, Signetti's had a dream season. I really like Notre Dame, though. They since their loss to Northern Illinois, they have just kind of methodically marched through the season. They're probably feeling pretty good that Freeman's got a new contract and is probably going to be staying for a little while. So I think all that bodes well. I like the fact that the game is at Notre Dame to favor the Fighting Irish. So the only thing I hope is that ABC will AI Keith Jackson's voice, because ABC has the game. So I think that would be a great way to wake up the echoes, to have an AI Keith Jackson voice call the game.
Well, you that or have old Brent start talking Carlisle Holiday, just to end it on the recruiting you love. Bill, we'll check in with you on Sunday for a live Average Joe. Appreciate you much, bud.
All right, boys. Merry Christmas.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
JB. Back into it, it's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. He is the voice of Husker Volleyball, and he has you hammer that grammar. The incredible John Baylor with us as JB. You are awesome for giving us a few minutes. What an epic match. What a tough result for Husker Volleyball last night. You were there to describe it. You did an amazing job of that, but wow, I'm in shock. And I was talking with Elijah. We were at Iowa City for another one of those Hawkeye specials for the football side of things, and you wonder away, JB, going, how did that happen? I'm wondering away from last night as we all stayed up to watch and saying the same thing. Man, have you pinched yourself?
It's tough. It's still a little surreal because Nebraska had it. They were up 22-16 in the fourth. They thought they had a match point, and apparently there was a block touch on the Jess Merzick kill there in the end of set 4. And so it's tougher when you're that close. You know, I mean, people like to say that, Red Sox and Cubs fans are snake bitten. Well, it was a heck of a lot easier to be a Cubs fan because they never were any good. But as a Red Sox fan, and I know this firsthand, every year they are good, and they still never won it. That's painful. So to be that close, to grab the brass ring with Louisville, on Sunday, a very winnable match, it really hurts because it takes so much effort to get there. And you just have to credit Penn State. They just kept believing. They're inspired by their coach, and they've just been playing so well. And they earned it those last 3 sets, but Nebraska had their chances.
Yeah, and John, one of the things you look at is momentum, which is so hard to quantify in sports, but you felt it slipping away in that third set just a little bit. You thought you had it back in the fourth with Harper Murray, that great scoring run she had from the service line. Nebraska, the 10-1 scoring run. You think maybe they've snatched it back, but then Penn State takes it right back to finish the fourth set, and Nebraska was never able to reclaim momentum. It's hard to quantify momentum, though, in sports. So what do you think went wrong for the Huskers at the end of that match last night?
A lot. They got a little tentative. Yeah, they took the old foot off the gas pedal there. First 2 sets, Nebraska was dictating, and they kind of relaxed a little bit. And you're right, momentum just swings wildly, especially in the sport of volleyball. And it's not any one thing, guys. It's a sport with so much interdependency. I mean, every player depends on the other 5, and there just were little things that didn't quite go Nebraska's way. I mean, for example, Huskers stopped setting the middle. Andy Jackson had huge numbers of kills after 2 sets and just had a few more at the end of the match. And, you wonder what could have been done to get her the ball a little bit more. That's just one example. But, it's the end is always what we remember most. It's the outcome that we talk about in history, but it's the relationships, the process, the joy, the atmosphere, for example, at the Devaney on Sunday and the win against Wisconsin. That's all part of it as well. But for the moment, we grieve, and grief is the product of love. When you grieve, you've loved something. And it's not like losing a loved one. That's not what I'm suggesting. But, there's a real strong connection between Husker fans and this team. And right now there's some grief across the state.
John, you've seen a lot of these championship-level teams. You've called championship-level matches and championship games. And where does this team rank for you? I know that it stings, it hurts, but from a team that's loaded standpoint, is this maybe one of the best teams out there not to get it done?
Absolutely. I shared my thoughts with Tom Chattel in his article this week about the 10 teams I watched since 1994 that I thought were the greatest. That was my assignment, the 10 greatest Husker volleyball teams of all time. I think they'd already accomplished top 10, and then if they'd won on Thursday night against Penn State, I think they would have been top 6. And then if they had won on Sunday, I think it would have been a good question between 1 and 2. But, yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot of weaknesses. I mean, they got 2 elite middles. They got an elite setter. They've got an elite outside, and they've got one of the best liberos in the history of the sport. So, yeah, that's a nice core. Merritt Beeson had an up-and-down season. I think she'll have a great pro career, hopefully. Taylor Landfair had some big kills last night, but she had a tough time putting up big numbers And so that didn't help. But they had great chemistry. They love each other. They spend so much time together. The bus in the back when we're riding to and from airports is always full of laughter and joy. And so this is one of the most talented teams, but it's a team that got a lot out of that talent. They just missed one thing, and that's the final result they all wanted so desperately.
John, whenever you look at this senior class, I think it speaks to the expectations that have been built around here by people like Terry Pettit and John Cook, just the years and years of success. What does it say to you with the legacy that the senior class is walking out of Nebraska without a national championship? And that's a high bar to set, but it feels like so many senior classes, the ones you remember, have hoisted a title at the end of the season. What does the legacy of this senior class for Nebraska look like to you?
That they were a great success, and that it's incredibly unfair to expect a four-year college kid to have a national championship during those 4 years. There's a lot of good fortune that goes into that. There's a lot beyond their control that goes into that. And the idea that we'd say that somebody's mediocre or average or fell before expectations because they weren't able to stand up on the gold medal stand at the end of one of their 4 seasons is pretty absurd and unfair. And so they did everything they could. They just came up a little short at the end in 2021 when that overachieving team, when all these great seniors were freshmen, took down Texas on the regional final, one of the great wins in Husker history, and then crushes Pittsburgh in the national semi, and then just falls behind in the fifth against Wisconsin and gets it to 15-12 in the fifth. And then sophomore year, they're undermanned when Kenzie Knuckles gets hurt, and it's a total different trajectory the rest of the way. If Kenzie stays healthy, we win that Oregon match, and then we have a great matchup against Louisville. So that's what happened in their sophomore season. And last year, they went 27-0. Then they lost one match on the road to Wisconsin and just ran into the hottest team and a generational talent in Madison Skinner in the final match. And last night they had 2 match points and just couldn't seal the deal. I'd call that pretty successful.
John Baylor's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Husker Volleyball, an incredible season. JB, the reload is real for John Cook in Nebraska. It might be too soon, but let's talk 2025, brother.
Well, we got a good core, but again, you never know with the portal. I mean, people are jumping in and out of the portal every doggone week. I think it's news when a football player is not in the portal. I mean, that should be a headline. Andy Jackson should be back, and she's a first-team All-American, and Bergen's a great setter. She's a second-team All-American, and it's Harper's team now. I mean, she basically took this team on her back in the middle of this year and certainly in the tournament. So she's your leader. She's on the outside. I think Olivia and Laney will compete for that libero position, and the other one will get to play 3 rotations as a back row sub. That's a pretty nice core. And I forgot to mention Rebecca Alec, who turned it on offensively in the tournament, hit better than 400 in the NCAA tournament, and put up big numbers as a blocker. She's one of the best blockers in the country. Not too shabby. So my guess is they're going to shop the portal for a right side, but Skylar Pierce is a candidate for the right side. They've got a top recruiting class, including the number 1 recruit in the country. Taylor Landfair probably will be back, and she could possibly play right side and probably left side. So you never know with the portal, but if everybody comes back, they'll be preseason number 4 or 5, and that's kind of a healthy place to be. I think one thing that happened this season reminds me a little bit of 2016, that weary is the head that wears the crown. Now, they didn't win the championship last year, but it felt like it almost, with all the stadium match and all the media attention and the Caitlin Clark effect. Wherever Nebraska plays, they sell out. Literally, wherever Nebraska volleyball played this year, they sold the arena out, and they set all kinds of attendance records. Everywhere they went, these kids can't go through a Target without being stopped, and that's wonderful. That's what they signed up for. That's part of it, and it's amazing how they deal with all the attention. But it's a 3.5, 4-month season, and I think they might have been just a little bit tired at the end of this, in part because they were number 1 or number 2 or number 3 all year long. So I think Coach Cook relishes being the hunter and not the hunted. I think he'll go back to being the hunter in 2025.
Let's end with this, John, and talk about John Cook and how he manages moments like last night and moving forward. how he'll continue to get this team to excel and reach for that high bar.
Well, he's a master motivator. He's got the secret sauce. I mean, who among us in their late 60s is doing their best work? And if you look at what he's done his last decade, it's his best decade, 7 Final Fours in 10 years, and there were 5 title matches in 10 years. It's a pretty remarkable stretch. So every day, every week, he's always thinking, how he can reach them, how he can motivate them, how he can push them, and next year will be no exception. I mean, you might see some changes in the coaching staff. I hope not. It's a fabulous staff, but I think they're going to go to the All-American banquet today, Friday, and then they'll go their separate ways, and I think they'll get some R&R and think through this and come back even stronger next year. But it's just remarkable how that 25 going on 26-year head coach reinvents himself and improves and reinvents the program all the time.
John, I know we said last thought, but I have another quick one for you before we get you out. Lexi Rodriguez, her career, how do you define it? Obviously, all-time digs record holder. She said that last night. How do you remember her career? What's next for her, and how does Nebraska try to replace her next season?
She sent a message to the sport that it doesn't just belong to tall people, that you can be 5'8" and shorter and have a bigger impact than a 6'4" attacker. I mean, it was Jess Merzick versus Lexi Rodriguez last night, over and over and over. And Jess won a lot of those battles, and Lexi won a lot of those battles. But we need as an audience to not just watch the volleyball, not just watch the attackers, not just be obsessed with the attack numbers, percentages, and kill numbers, but to really take a look at those defensive numbers, because few have had the impact on the sport that she has had. And an example is every opponent for Nebraska game plans to avoid her. That's how big an impact she has had. And she has incredible anticipation. She'll have an amazing professional career. I think she'll have USA on her jersey in the very near future. I think we're going to get to watch her for about another decade or so, let us hope. But what an ambassador for the sport and for the university for the last 4 years. I mean, if you saw Lexi Rodriguez without a smile in the last 4 years, that was a rarity.
John Baylor with us, voice of Husker Volleyball. JB, we love you, bud, and we'll check in next time. Thanks so much.
Feelings are mutual. Take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, as a lot of you in the stream are talking about Dante Dowdell going to Kentucky. Well, good luck. God bless, and we'll see Dante running the ball in the SEC. Elijah, you are hearing some things about Nebraska's quarterback target, one of the many targets Nebraska has for this portal session. Marcos Davila, the top 30 quarterback that ended up at Purdue and liked his time in Lincoln.
Sounds like he liked his time in Lincoln a lot.
And that might be a permanent time in Lincoln shortly.
I expect an announcement.
Okay.
Soon. So that's what I'll say there.
Let's say hi to Claus. Clausborne's with us. He's imaginary. He wears red. Claus, how you doing? Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Well, Merry Christmas, Christopher and Elijah. You know, this is my busy time of year, but I always make time for you guys and your listener.
Well, yes, you, me, and Elijah makes 3, so plural. But I get where you're coming from. And let's start off before we get into the forecast. The naughty or nice list. Do we have any holiday music at all? Look at you. We have some holiday music. Wonderful. Claus, we'll start off with Coach Rule. Is he on the naughty or nice list, and what's he getting?
Well, Coach is on the nice list this year. Could have been a little nicer. Could have had a little better record. But we'll take a bowl game. And as I understand, he's got another young one on the way. He already had 3, which, let's be honest, guys, is one too many. You got to switch from man to zone, and it's just a lot. So I came up with an idea. He's going to be busy with 3 kids already and a 4th one coaching a football team. His wife is going to be running her business. So I went and found all of the fired coaches that we're still paying money to. And even if I pay them $20 an hour for babysitting, he'll never have to have a kid without a babysitter for the next 45 years. So I think he'll be set up.
Love it, Claus. That was a rumor that Rule addressed, but at least you're thinking. How about old Dana Holgerson? Is Dana on the naughty or nice list?
Well, Dana is definitely on the nice list. I think our offense did pretty well around the time that he took over, and he discovered Emmett Johnson in the broom closet. So I've gotten him a full suite of hair care products. I've heard some people saying he ought to get a haircut due to the receding hairline, but listen, there's no reason to shut down the party in the back, even if the business in the front goes into receivership. So
It's Clausborne with us here, the naughty or nice list. And Clausborne, on the flip side of Dana, Marcus Satterfield. What are you getting him?
Well, I'll be honest, I really didn't think I'd have to worry about having him on my list this year.
Oh, no.
And so I guess since he's going to stick around and take a demotion and watch another man do his job, I just grabbed the nearest T-shirt that I could find, a T-shirt with the acronym for the Central Utah Center for Kinesiology.
Claus, naughty or nice list. John Cook, he might need a hug.
Well, John is probably permanently on the nice list no matter what happens. And I heard during the television broadcast last night that last week, instead of sticking around to watch the volleyball game after ours, he went in and watched the series finale of Yellowstone. So you can actually rent out the Yellowstone Ranch. Mm-hmm. And so I've done that for him, but I've done it at a time when you can't do any horseback riding or fishing or hunting, and instead just set up a bunch of film of Penn State volleyball to figure out how to beat those girls next year.
Well, that'll be inspiring.
It's Clausborne with us here, the naughty or nice list. And Claus, we go to the stream chat. Tiger Shark Diver wants to know about Ed Foley. He's got a feeling he's on the naughty list. But what'd you get Ed Foley for Christmas this year?
Well, Ed is on the neutral list for me. I'm still going to get him a gift. But I understand he likes to travel. And I was able to track down his dearly departed Uncle Matthew's van parked down by a river. So he can use that to go to Benkelman or Beaver Crossing or Gordon or wherever the heck it is he wants to go.
Claus, he's been on the list the last 15 years, some naughty, some nice. What's Carl getting for Christmas this year?
Well, back when we started this 15 years ago, Carl was on his way to Florida, and I was concerned about him not really knowing a whole lot of people there, so we got him a subscription to Adult Friend Finder. And now Carl is taking a bit of a beating, literally, as an assistant coach at his high school. And when I asked how he planned to defend himself, did he know karate or anything, he said, yeah, I know karate and 2 other Japanese words. So,
wow.
I'm signing Carl up for some self-defense courses, and hopefully in 2025, there will be a few less bumps and bruises.
Claus, what about the man sitting right in front of me?
Oh, no.
Christopher Schmidt. Naughty, nice, what'd you get him?
Well, I went ahead and got Christopher. I went to the Citadel of Westeros and got him the book that teaches you how to cure grayscale. If he's going to keep golfing every weekend with Jorah Mormont, who now goes by Bill Doleman, he may want to be able to prevent that disease from spreading.
That's pretty good.
Claus, how about Elijah and the Bunny?
Well, for the Bunny, it kind of relates back to what I was just talking about. I got one of those pillows that has a little arm that hugs around you and looks like a male supermodel, so that she doesn't feel lonely in the 72 hours a week you spend golfing.
It's nice of you.
And then for Elijah, considering how much he goes to Colorado, I called my old friend Ben Stein and got him some clear eyes.
Thank you, Claus.
Claus, that's awesome. How are we doing time-wise? We have time to sneak in Indiana, Notre Dame?
Yeah, probably.
All right, let's hit the forecast. Claus, we love you. Thanks for the naughty or nice list. Signetti, not real nice, shooting his mouth off on game day, and the FCC might be visiting him. Indiana is dogged by 7. I like Notre Dame. Notre Dame here by about 10, 31-21. I think Indiana makes it respectable. Elijah?
If there's any team among the 4 this weekend that can pull the upset, I think it's Indiana. I don't think they do. Give me Notre Dame 28 and Indiana 20.
Claus, you going Hoosiers or Irish?
Well, I'm going to take Notre Dame because after Coach Signetti's performance, if he wants to be absolved, he's going to have to light and relight every candle in the grotto on Notre Dame's campus, and that'll probably take him till halftime. So give me Notre Dame 28 and Indiana 24.
Claus, hang tight. We'll finish the forecast next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Wine and Dottie Friday edition. The forecast is here. Clausborne with us, his naughty or nice list. And it was gifts for those on the naughty or nice list. Check that out. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with the Hail Varsity podcast. Let's continue on as we all picked the Irish. I think Claus picking Indiana to cover but not win. We'll start back up here with playoff football. It is Penn State. Got a picture from Coach Barnett. He is grilling those wings something beautiful. I got to send it your way, Elijah. Barnett's already getting into Wingtown. So I like Penn State. I like their talent. I like the home field. And I think SMU is going to make them sweat a little bit. I think 8.5's too much. 35-28. Win, but cover for SMU. Win for Penn State.
Yeah, this is a game to me that feels like, as Justice calls them, small to medium games James can thrive in. SMU's a good team. Yes, it's the college football playoff. I think Penn State has more talent, and I think that's what Penn State needs to do. As we talked about earlier in the week, they win the games that they're favored in. They're favored in this one. I think they win. I don't think they cover, though. Give me Penn State 28 and SMU 24.
Claus, you going with Pony XS or Penn State?
Well, this is certainly a game that's hard to pick a team to root for, considering they both have had some morally questionable things in their history. Of course, we all know about the Penn State scandal, and then SMU forced us all to know who Craig James is. So I like Penn State at home. I think it's going to be a close one. I'm going to take Penn State 10 and SMU 5, allegedly.
Oh, wow. All right. Clemson, Texas, -12. Horns. Texas wins. I think Texas is going to have to go to Arch Manning to win. I think they'll do that in the second half. And that might help things be a little bit easier. 33-17. Give me Texas with the cover right down to the wire over Clemson. Elijah.
Texas rolls in this one. Texas has a lot more talent. Texas is a team that's going to make a deep run. Clemson's lucky to be here. Give me Texas 42 and Clemson 17.
What's your word, Claus? Going Tigers or Bevo?
Well, I like Texas in this one, not only because I think you're right, they have better athletes, and I think a little bit better game plan in general, not to mention that I have heard through the grapevine that Clemson has been a little bit distracted in their game planning. Dabo has spent most of his time trying desperately to find a direct flight from Clemson to Austin, because we all know how much he hates a transfer. So it's not my best work, but it's Christmas. You have to give it to me.
We'll give it to you.
Texas 35 and Clemson 17.
Ohio State -7, Tennessee. Rocket Top. Give me Tennessee to cover. Give me Ohio State to win. And it's going to be right around that 7.5. We'll say 28-24, Ohio State.
I'm with you, but that's too many points. Both these defenses play well. Give me Ohio State 21, Tennessee 17.
You're probably right with the lower scoring. Claus, what say you? OHIO or Rocky Top?
Well, I think Tennessee is hungry. We know their head coach is. But I think Ohio, known for their chili, is going to feed them a steady dose of cold weather they're not ready for and a punishing offensive attack. Give me Ohio State 28 and Tennessee 17.
Claus, enjoy your holiday. Thank you much.
Okay.